markets. It's all about...
You put it in a headline.
T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live!
Welcome to the Hunters Campfire Podcast. Pull up a chair and join Hurls, Jono and Mark as we share stories from the hunt, insights from the field, and a few laughs along the way. Whether you're chasing game or just love the outdoors, this is your place by the fire. G'day, Mark. How are you, mate?
Very well, thank you, mate. And joining us tonight is Peter Szaak, CEO of SSAA New South Wales. How are you going, Peter?
Good, gents. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. To carry on with Peers for Politics, tonight we're going to look again at New South Wales. It's going to be the bookend to Robert Borsak Jr.'s discussion, which certainly generated a lot of feedback. He had some great one-liners, that guy.
Is he good?
Sledges just as well as he speaks.
He sledges just as well as he speaks. So that's it. So tonight we're looking to get the viewpoint of what's happening specifically in New South Wales from SSAA New South Wales CEO. So we'll be leaning into your knowledge and experience around that, Peter. Yeah. But before we jump into that, I thought we might touch on hunt camp, because that's almost as hot a topic as the changing gun laws. Pete, just to give you an understanding, actually, Ian, do you want to run down the history of hunt camp? You've had a lot more to do with it than I have.
Yeah, wow, hunt camp. Okay, so it's been going a long time, but essentially it started when I first started hunting. I was going to say way back as a wee boy, but I was a little bit older than that. When I first came to Australia and joined the Australian Deer Association, actually, they ran a communal Queensland camp down in Nundle, out near Tamworth, and it allowed all of the branches of the ADA to come down and participate in a communal camp and go out hunting deer. Young guys could lean on the older guys. You know, I, for example, was able to go and shoot a deer, bring it into camp, and have experienced people show me how to break it down. It was just the most fantastic, immersive experience for a new hunter, for an older hunter that couldn't walk the hills to participate still, for people to tell stories around fires, all of that sort of stuff. And I went to that for a number of years, and over time it grew, and then it shrunk, and then it kind of disappeared a little bit. And then I rebirthed it, I guess, when we started the Hunters Campfire, this podcast. We had a lot of people that were tuning in and listening to, you know, the how-to guides. You know, Mark and I talk about various different parks you could go to, what game was in those parks, ones to focus on, how to find sign, what sign looked like, the type of gear you should use, all of that sort of stuff. So people would tune in, especially new hunters that didn't really have that granddad or dad mentor experience. They were curious about hunting. They would tune into the podcast, and that's how the podcast came about. But Hunt Camp was a way for people that were listening to us to come and put it into practice. So again, we would go to New South Wales, our licensed territory, and we would let everybody know that we were coming, and you could come and share camp. Now, we weren't guiding, we weren't telling you where to go to hunt or taking you hunting or anything like that, but we were sharing a camp, and we'd offer our tips and tricks, and then off you'd go hunting for the day and come back again. And if you were successful, we could help you with the processing and the caping and the whatever else happened afterwards. Now, year on year, I think we're going to be up to hunt camp number 5 for the Hunters Campfire this year. All of them so far have been held in Nundle and Hanging Rock, Tuggelow area. This year, we're moving it down to a state forest on the New South Wales Victorian border that will remain nameless. Actually, it won't. It's Bondi, because we've said it before. So we're heading down to Bondi State Forest and surrounding forests, and we're staying with we're staying on a private piece of land. We're doing that this time because if you're not familiar with it, Pete, and I'm sure you are, but the R license rules have recently changed. There's been some streamlining of things and some changing of things, and we don't want people to get caught out with the rule changes. It used to be you could book for a week. Now you can only book for 4 days at a time, and you can book multiple 4-day hunts. There's nights and days and this and that. If you get that wrong, you can end up being in the park with your rifle without a permit, and you might just accidentally get that wrong and fall foul of the rangers. So instead of having everyone going and camping in the park, we're going to camp on private land, and that takes away the need to have a permit to be camping where we're focusing our hunting activity. Now, of course, you've still got to go into the park with a permit to hunt, but sure, we can check all of that stuff off and make sure everyone's compliant as we go. So that's Hunt Camp. But what it's turned into is, I've got some amazing experiences where, we've talked to people about Zoleo, for example. Zoleo is like an inReach. It's a product that allows us to sat communicate. Lots of the team that come to hunt camp end up buying those Zolios, and you've got someone out in the field that's less experienced, or they're totally tired from hiking the hills, and then they shoot a big buck and they need help. They can jump on the Zolio. They can send camp a message, and everyone's Zolio's bling, 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 like someone's got this buck, and the
That's an
whole
app
place
that
is
That's an app that draws everyone
it-
in, right? Okay.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yep. So Zolio is a device like an EPIRB,
Haven't
but
got mine handy.
you can connect people via satellite messaging. So you can imagine a group of 30 hunters all in camp, sort of settling in around the campfire for the evening, and then the Zolios all bing, 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 off they go because someone's been successful out in the field. Like, okay, we've got to help this guy out. So a bunch of people get going, and off they go to help him drag it in. But that was one example. Another one was there was a young fella, Jack, who I think he said he'd hunted state land 15 or so times trying to chase down deer, and he just hadn't managed to get one. 15 attempts into a park to not get a deer, and he came to hunt camp, and we talked to him about how he went about his hunting and how he went about finding habitat and those sorts of things. He was doing most things right. The only thing he was doing wrong is he was spending so much time in the park. He was laying scent down everywhere, and he was moving way too quickly over long periods of time. And we said, well, look, if we just slow you right down and we get you to the right place for a short period of time, action's probably going to happen. Well, that night he came back with a deer over his shoulder, and he walked the gauntlet between 30 fellas, all slapping him on the back and hee-hawing and carrying on, and it gets butchered up and put over a crossover coals, and everyone gets to eat it. And yeah, it's just a bloody good experience. So anyway, that's the short version of my excited hunt camp. We love it. It's it booked out this year. We advertised it in our podcast that we put out on Wednesday. We launched it, and it's full. So if you're listening to this podcast now, a few days later, you can go on a wait list, but 30 spots have filled up within about 2 hours, and it's hotter than a pink show, I tell you. That's
great. So the numbers are determined by the availability of the property, and I suspect the deer that are available. Have you got limits on the hunt and the harvesting in terms of how many can be taken?
That's kind of governed by the R license itself. That Bondi can carry so many hunters per, every 3 months. That changes depending on what's happening in Bondi. But that's a forestry thing. So Bondi can carry a set number of hunters, and there's also forests that border Bondi. So it's not just one forest. So in terms of hunters who could hunt, we are nowhere near capacity. I think Bondi's got quite a large capacity,
about 80 something hunters can book
with
in there.
the plus. But what it is the actual private property that we're with. We're working with the Hellenic Hunters out of Sydney. They've got a limit on how many people they can have on their dirt at one time. So that's it. So that's really what the limit is, because they've
part of the activity is the culling ability, because pest vermin, and obviously that's part of it.
Yeah, well, it's our license hunting, so it is. I mean, certainly the design of the R license has changed to more of a recreational hunting focus than a conservation hunting focus. So we kind of look at the fact that you can have two thoughts at once, if you know what I mean. Sure. You can be a dedicated hunter and also have benefits in regards to management, because it's specifically deer and specifically sambar deer in this instance.
I was about to ask you what breed, sambar.
Yeah, so for us, to be honest, to say we're hunters who help manage herds rather than pest controllers.
Understood, but the end result is a biosecurity, which is what
that's
you're
right. As I said, I don't think you can't. You can have two thoughts at once. You can do something for one reason, and the benefits can flow from that. But then again, from a hunting point of view, if you don't get a deer, from a pest management point of view, that might not be successful. But if from a hunting point of view, a week in the forest is a week in the forest, type of thing.
The experience is key.
That's it. Agree. So I think for us, the weight is not wholly, but mostly on the idea of hunting.
Yeah. I think the more men and women we can give the confidence to go out hunting, the more of those metrics can be ticked off. And I think the majority of the people, if I'm totally honest, the majority of the people are coming to learn how to be hunters, to help to learn how to stalk and take a deer to put meat in the freezer. That's the majority. Then you get those that have gone through that stage of the idealistic meat hunter, I want to do it for the family and the table. They soon realize that at $2,000 a kilo worth of meat, that's what it's worth by the time you add up your costs. It doesn't stack up, but we love hunting, so we're out there doing it.
Yeah.
The economy benefits are there. We buy a lot of things on the road. We take the crew down to the local pub and support the local township wherever camp is. Spend some money in town, stock up on ice and food and all of those sorts of things while we're there. So those benefits exist. The biosecurity ones, I think the government does a good job. The people in the R license team do a good job of pulling those statistics together and spruiking the biological, the impacts to the environment. But the honest truth of the matter is that we love hunting.
We're hunters.
And that's why
I mean, and that's it. And those metrics in terms of, benefit. So you've got, the immediate metric, which is deer management. And then, of course, there's the benefits that flow from that is, environmental, ecological management. And then you've got I think the social component, which is often forgotten about the actual social quality of what happens through hunting. Hunting is a social activity, and it has many very recognizable social benefits. And then we start to get into the economic benefits, So like we're driving to basically inside of the Vic border. Okay. So we leave Brisbane. So in a couple of hours, I'm now out of Queensland. And so I'm now spending, and I spend down through New South Wales, through Canberra, back into New South Wales, and then turn around and spend all the way back from from the economical, so the benefit of the economy. That's also a type of tourism that's running right through New South Wales.
And your services are free, right?
That's right. And the thing is, because we're camping on private land, we're not actually, and from a tourism point of view, we're not actually using the tourist facilities of a town that we stop in. We're just buying fuel, buying food, but we're not using so we're actually a kind of cost positive tourist. They don't need to put, ablution blocks for us because we've got a mobile home and we've got to empty it somewhere. We're not doing that. We're actually spending all the way down. And I think that's another really important point of, and to what's happening with gun laws, that's at risk. That, what is it? Something like $450 million. The license puts on the value of hunting to New South Wales. I think it's that's at risk because that's what we're doing. So there's a multifaceted benefit around that.
So the entry level in terms of your activity, that would be governed by the R license in terms of the
permits. That's it.
Like
we're not running this activity. We're not booking you in. You turn up as a fully licensed R licensed hunter. You go do your thing during the day. We just have a camp that you come back to where you engage with other hunters.
And that's supported by the local property owner.
Well, actually, we have a particular property that we're staying on, which is through the Hellenic Hunters. It's their property.
Normally, the history would show you that we actually stay in the park. So you have to then manage, if you've got Nundle, for example, could have about 25 hunters at a time, which meant that assuming, because in Nundle we're hunting the rut, so it's the fallow rut, every man and his dog that wants to hunt that area wants to hunt in Nundle at exactly the same time every year. So there might be 25 spots, but we, like everybody else, have got to compete for those. So you're up at midnight when the booking opens and you're madly tapping away on your computer trying to refresh screens and get the booking. So you might get 20 of the 25, or you might get 18 of the 25, and that's how many we get. But then you start to get overlaps, right? And then we start to piece together what's where and how many people can come in. But we stay in the park, and only the people with a permit are allowed to stay in the park. So then those that don't get a permit often will come in as a non-hunter, and they'll come in for the experience of camp because the deer come in, the butchering happens, the caping happens. We'll run. Last year we put up a big screen, and one of the mapping guys came in from Athena Spatial, and they talked about e-scouting, and we projected stuff on a screen so people could learn how to scout from home using all of the mapping tools. All sorts of that sort of stuff is in part.
So the activity it's all on foot. Everything's on foot for you guys?
Yeah, pretty much. You can't hunt from cars, but you can travel to your hunting spot in your vehicle.
You can move around the state forest in a vehicle, but the hunting itself is on foot.
And nighttime activity you mentioned, so is that like a thermal activity?
No, there is now in And this in the state forest says night and day hunting, but night is not for the kind of hunting we do. Night is the doggers, so we won't. But there's almost like now so the original booking was like 24 hours, so that was your 24 hours. They've almost kind of broken it up now into like a daytime, nighttime shift. And so rifle shooters are daytime, doggers are night.
Yeah, it's a great program. It's getting a lot of people out there in the bush. A lot of skills being transferred. And to your other question, no, we don't charge a fee. There is sometimes a fee to attend because we've got to pay for access to private block, or we might run some fun competitions you can opt into. But generally, the things that we put forward they don't cost the punter to attend. They already spend enough.
And key to your activity, not to say that it's other activities are not key, is that what you cull, you harvest.
Oh yeah,
we do our best.
We do our best. I mean, what? Last year there was how many deer in camp last year?
16 or 17 deer came in.
Yeah. And there's a couple of guys. Last year's a good example. A couple of guys were basically the camp butcher shop, as it were.
All right. And in terms of your new shooters, I guess if I can call them, or new hunters, they walk into this environment, and you spoke earlier, Hills, about the great experience that associates itself with someone that's an entry-level candidate in this environment, which is great. So as they come in, do you like supervised activities with them, or what's the pathway in terms of someone that wants to start doing what you're doing?
Yeah, so everyone that comes in has got to be. So we got bow hunters as well as rifle hunters. So everyone that comes into the camp itself has to have a license, has to be allowed to be there, has to have passed their R license. To be part of the R license program, they've got to be part of a shooting organisation, et cetera, et cetera. So most of the time, there's a certain amount of trust that goes on with this that says, especially in the early days, if you want to come to this, we have a no dickhead policy. It self-polices itself. We've been very lucky not to have any idiots come through just and ruin it. But essentially, we lay down some safety rules just around camp. Everything's got to be unloaded before it comes back in. We hand out breech flags to go into the rifles. If you bring your rifle out of your vehicle and you want to show and tell around the campfire, and this is what I've got, and this is my scope, then it's got to have a visible breech flag in it so everyone can see that it's safe. So we put those rules down. But as far as us teaching anyone, no, we're hands off. That's not us. We're not guides. We're not instructors. We're not educators. We're not insured to do it, and we don't want to be doing it. What we're providing is a communal space. If you want to pick up more skills around how to, we can help you in theory, but you go to the range and you go to your clubs for those skills. We can't be teaching people in the field.
You said earlier that you had a young fellow, and forgive me what his name was, but he was saying he was running too hot, and he's leaving a lot of scent around. So that would have been back at camp when you were sort of saying, hey, dude, just calm down a bit. Sure. And this is probably where your mistakes are based on your own experiences. So I think that's key. That's good.
And people come back and they're like, here's my photos. Is this a scrape? Is this, nah, mate, that's wombats. Damn it, I thought it was the deer scrape for sure. No, mate, that's wombats or cockatoos. So, the communal experience, and it's not just us. Like we put it together, but we've got guys that come and they got a wealth more experience than what we have, or I have anyway. But they're just as happy to impart their information. And then you've got older guys that, they've been hunting for years and years and years, and they miss the camaraderie. They don't have the legs on them anymore, but they desperately want to be part of that hunting culture. And this is a place where they can come and be part of that and still deliver and hand out that information to the younger hunter. So I think that's
the wisdom, mate. And I think in society today, regardless of what you're involved in, the wisdom is with our elderly. And I may have mentioned earlier in terms of my background, referring to my grandfather as a World War II veteran in Malta. And in terms of my hunting activities and primary production activities, that all came about by spending a lot of time with him. And I think we all have someone like that in our lives, and to see that still continuing in your environment, I think is a great thing. Why wouldn't you not do that? That's the legacy
one of the really interesting things that's kind of happened is something that, again, we were hoping would happen, is that every year when there's the event, we create a Facebook Messenger chat room.
Yep.
Okay. Those chat rooms are still going
for years and years.
So they still go. And so, like, there's a chat room from 2 years ago. There's a chat room from last year. The chat room from last year is a Nundle chat room. Those guys are going to Nundle. They're all just talking amongst themselves.
That's great.
then we just still see it, but I hardly ever. They've formed their own group, their own things, and so. Recently someone said, "Hey, look, I'm going to Nundle," and we said, "Have talk to these guys. They're going," and so it's kind of created its own little multiple ecosystems, which is what we want to do. We want to network these things. We don't want to have like this single source of truth. We want to have people talking about these things, experiencing themselves. And
It's
so,
the hunting family, mate. The way I see it, it's
that's
a
right.
family.
They all go
That's
hunt
great.
together. They talk together. Off they go. And that's been a big part of what we've done. There's a number of people who we've helped start up. That's it. We've never really kind of thought, well, we're like the
elitists.
we want to get you in.
Yeah.
We want to get you in, give you the confidence to kind of go, I can do this myself, and off you go.
And more importantly, I think, in time to come, they'll probably come back to you and say, oh, by the way, this is something I'm going to give you back. So it's as you say. It's a roundabout.
We get, images every week. Someone go, I got one. I got it.
And I got it earlier than you, and I did it better than you.
I got it. And
it's bigger than yours. That's right.
That's right. Or the other one was like, there's one that was really nice. Was he go, my son got one. So he said it gave him the confidence, and so then he took his boy with him, and they both kind of fed off each other from a confidence point of view, and away you go, and you kind of go, look at that, creating generations. So that's it. So it's very much about we don't want to be the font of all knowledge. We just want to be that kind of thing that pushes you along, because as you know, and I think we'll talk about it a bit more. But if you don't have a grandfather, or you don't have that crazy uncle, or you don't have that, and Barry Hallett was a good example. He
of the
got
kooky uncle.
Well, it was his. Remember, he said it was his mate. His mate introduced him to his dad. His mate's dad was the guy. So there was no family connection, but they were able to build it that way. So that's what we want. We want to build connections, which probably leads us right into where we're at too, because we're talking to you.
Where you asked, that whole remit for me, and it's in a family, and we keep talking about it. Making memories is key to all this, and I think that seems what be happening in your environment. I think it's a healthy environment.
Which probably gives us a good example, a good segue into, we'll probably stop talking now and let you have a few words. So can you give us a little bit of your background about how you, as I said, I don't think you came out of the egg as CEO. So how'd you get from where you are to CEO?
Well, hopefully once I start on this descriptor of me, and some people are really good at talking about themselves and others aren't, but I'll give you the hoedown on the lowdowns. In the early days, as I said, I probably got in a little bit of strife. I lived in the western suburbs of Sydney. I was fortunate enough to have a grandfather who felt as if that I was worthy of sort of dragging me out of an environment that I was probably going to get myself in a fair bit of trouble in. So I went out to Bathurst. He had a property out there, and spent a fair bit of time on the property learning all things farming, and certainly hunting and shooting as you would in those environments. I did the usual stuff, went to a public school, graduating in 1988, if you want to call it that, in Kelso. And the first thing I did was go and join the New South Wales Police Force at a tender young age of 18. I then went through the process of being involved in that environment. I worked in a lot of remote locations. I worked out at Walgett, did a couple of tours out there. I was fortunate enough to work in one-man police station at Kangaroo Valley, and spent a bit of time there on the south coast, Newcastle. Spent about 28 years, including my last 5 years as an unsworn member of the New South Wales Police Force at the Firearms Registry. So I did that, and obviously in that environment, I learned a lot of things in terms of, I guess, more so the regulation side of the house, more to do with sports target shooting at a time where I probably didn't do a lot of that. And over the last 5 years, I've done more than that than I probably ever did. When you walk around in my environment, and this my descriptor is how I, as a police officer, you're carrying a gun, which was fine. It's for different reasons as to why I use one today. And, probably one of the things back then in terms of handguns was not something that I was really interested in, given that I had my hunting side of the house in primary production. That said, I've now moved into the handgun disciplines, which I thoroughly enjoy. It's a different environment, as you would imagine. And came into the SSAA space back in, I think, 2022, where I was asked whether I'd be interested in getting involved in the regulatory and training space. Spent the last few years doing that, training SSAA courses, getting our firearm safety trainers where they needed to be in terms of what the requirement was, doing our RO, our range officer instructor courses, RO courses, our pistol safety courses, and so on. And then I was fortunate enough to be offered probably near on 8 to 12 months ago, an opportunity to roll into this CEO role, which I've accepted. And I'm very pleased that I've had that opportunity, which I'm maintaining current state. That's Pete.
Well, pause it. You joined the SSAA environment in 2022. You weren't around it before then?
Well, not proper. I had lots
just
of mates
maybe a membership here.
Yeah, membership, but not officially, I suppose, if that's the way I could explain it. I wasn't in any state position, but certainly given my activities when it came to the policing side of the house, the regulatory side of the house, membership was there, but it was probably off to one side. My interest for the most part was hunting and primary production. And yes, whilst I was a member in terms of being involved in the sports target side of the house, probably not as much, but now I certainly am. It's great.
Yeah, that's a heck of a lot of practical experience to bring into the role.
Well,
obviously the reason you moved from new member to CEO over a 4-year period.
Maybe.
That's a rapid rise. That's a rapid rise to CEO role, I tell you.
Maybe.
So you say you're fortunate enough to end up in the CEO role. There would have been times in the last few months that you might not have felt so fortunate. It's been a rough few months.
Hey, look, the role in itself is, I'm absolutely fortunate to be in the role. So far as I say that there are a lot of other people that are doing it way tougher than me. I live in Lismore, and notwithstanding that, we went through some horrendous floods here, and I always say whilst we went through what we went through, there's a lot of people that have done a lot worse. So if I'm in a position based on, I guess, what I like to say is my background that otherwise helps the environment that I passionately am involved in, that being primary producers, sports target shooters, more so hunters. Well, I'm glad to have the opportunity to be in this space.
Yeah, fantastic. Tell us a bit about the pistol shooting. Mark's an enthusiast, a collector enthusiast, I should say. What do you lean towards? What disciplines are you shooting?
Well, precision pistol, we're trying to do a little bit more in our practical space, practical shooting, getting the pistol involvement there. I mean, obviously IPSC is there, but whilst that's not, a SSAA discipline proper, it offers some really good skill sets, I guess. Our version of that, I would like to see probably more so in New South Wales for nothing more than I think it's a good discipline as well. We have it well represented in other parts of the country, namely probably Western Australia, of all places, which stood up there very positively by one of our national chairs there, which is great. So that's what I've been doing most of at this stage, but I've had a dabble in Wild Bunch. We've got Matty Barwick as our discipline chair out at Bathurst. He's actually just come back from America after being involved in the world titles. He and his cohort have done reasonably well, exceptionally well, I would say, given how much we shoot that over here in terms of when you go over there. So I've had a bit of a play in that too, which is great in the single action space.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I saw a report of they did very well actually, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah,
they did very well. Yeah.
The 3-gun, the Wild Bunch. Yeah, that certainly. Yeah, I think that's one of the fastest growing shooting sports or disciplines around. In fact,
it's growing legs. There's a bit to it, and we all got different facets of what we enjoy. You got an alias there. It's obviously derived itself from the US. It's very much around that cowboy theme. And whilst it's not for everyone, like any discipline, I think it's great. It's a bit of fun. There's a lot of young people that are involved in it, which is great. In fact, I think 2 of the people that went over there were both juniors, and they did exceptionally well.
Yeah. Is the Wild Bunch any different to the 3-gun, or is it just a different branding?
Well, I think it's a slightly different branding. So the Wild Bunch in New South Wales using obviously single action pistols, we're using shotgun, and we're using lever action. I think 3-gun was more so not so much the lever action or the different type of shotguns. But again, Matt Barwick is a black badge instructor, which is a credential that you get from the States. He's got that, and he brings that level of expertise to our environment, which is fantastic.
Yeah. It looks a lot of fun, and there's all that around it, which is as you said, you have an alias, you have a character, and you've got the costume, and then there's the sets. That's the old Western town and all that stuff. It looks like a lot of fun, to be honest. I'm sure the competition is very, very serious, but the
100%. It's all one-on-one. The competition is
very fun.
Oh, massively. And the ladies, some of the outfits are outstanding. They're well represented. Yeah, and it's all one-on-one supervision.
That's right. You have someone with you, don't you? The timekeeper and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. One-on-one time. good time if you like that kind of thing.
That's it. Yeah, I'm actually very interested in getting into a pistol shooting this year. I've decided I really want to get into it, and there's a particular pistol that's coming out from Beretta that I've got my eye on. So when that lands, I'll probably decide to jump through the hoops then.
Well, hopefully it lands at a time where you're able to get it. Let's hope so.
It's very true. I think for a while here in Queensland, we're okay in that space, but I'm not punching the air about our situation in Queensland.
Well, notwithstanding that, without me getting to all the politics, and let's face it, there's a lot of there. I mean, if your premier's anything to go by, he's sort of stood his ground and made some pretty monumental statements, which I think is true to his view on things. And I think that's a good thing for Queensland.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how much pressure gets put on him from the feds as to whether he can hold true to the statements or not. For now, we're hoping, that's for sure. Yeah, a lot of watch and wait and see, I think.
Yeah. So basically, it looks like in Queensland it'll be a tightening around, backing around checks and things like that. But it doesn't. It looks there won't be. It would at the moment appear to be no physical change to what most people would experience when they get a firearms license, including New Zealand residents, which was a really important one here, very close to home for him. So they're going to grandfather it. So if you've got it, you've got it. Your time to act is the length of your license or what's left on your license.
Yeah, so our laws, and I'm not sure how much you're across it, and to be frank, we're still trying to work out how it's all going to unravel. Whilst it's been ascended, we're still waiting for it to be proclaimed. Seemingly, there's a difference in that. Notwithstanding all of that, a little bit unsure about, very unsure about a lot of aspects of it. So limitations obviously key to our concern. I would very much like to think that would be a strong consideration for New South Wales members in this instance to have, if there's a grandfathering clause that would allow for that to occur, and particularly in instances where, let's face it, where we're being wrapped up in a model or legislation that attributes itself to terrorism, and somehow law-abiding firearms owners get wrapped up into that. We would be foolish, and none of us are, to think that nothing should change given the atrocities that occur. But I think what needs to be key to that is what happens is measured. Now, when we start talking about an inability to consult, whilst I'm not here to pick on anyone, if we're going to talk about unintended consequences, in my mind, again, they're unintended in circumstances. We asked everyone the question, we got our answers, we made a decision, and bugger, we didn't think about that one. But if you don't have the ability to consult, and you don't say, if you do that, this could hurt this, well, then to me, it's not unintended consequences. It's an ill-informed decision.
Yes.
So
I think that's a really good point.
100%, mate. Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's not, we didn't know that was going to happen. It was, no,
you didn't ask.
You did. That's right. You didn't look hard enough.
It wasn't. And to that end, you didn't ask, but the very people that are probably subjected to most of the pain that comes from this, we're all law-abiding. We get it. What happened there was not great, but why the very people that you're sort of focusing a lot of this on are the people that weren't involved in what happened?
Yeah. And I think it has been quite some time past now since we were all up in arms, wondering what was going on in that first week. People have started to wrap their heads around what some of the words mean, what some of the intent means, what those consequences look like. States like Queensland have taken a bit more time to listen, I guess, and be a bit more informed with their decision. It feels to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but even today in the media, Mins is in the media defending his decision, but the words seem different. The words almost feel like I'm defending my position, but I'm not closing the door, or there's still work to be done before the proclamation happens. Kind of feels like there's a softening without losing face, and I wonder whether the noise is getting to him. I feel like it is, but how's it feel on the ground?
Well,
I mean, you're way closer to this.
Yeah. So, I'm receiving lots of calls, and as you'd imagine, I just say that flippantly. I make a point of speaking to our members, and if they make a point of speaking to me, I'm attending AGMs. I'm telling people what I know, and sadly, in truth, and part of that, whilst I think I know a lot, I don't know too much. And the reason why I don't know too much is because no one else knows too much. So when we start unraveling what's been suggested in terms of legislation, there's some key aspects of this that have not been thought out. Now, to your point, Earls, if indeed Mr. Minns or Premier Minns is now starting to realise that that is an issue, I take some comfort in thinking that he's now thinking about that. I'm a little bit disappointed he didn't think about that previously, but I'm not the Premier and I'm not informed, I guess, as he has been. I'd be really interested to know who it was informing him in terms of how he came about his decision. And you know, I have never met Premier Minns, but in my world, and certainly who I talk to, they say he's a reasonable guy. We've had the government come to our ranges and support our activities and be all part of that. And that's been very comforting and very positive. But when it got to this, I don't know what the influence was, to be frank, gents, but whatever it was, if he's taken a knee now to start to think about how he was informed and feels as if maybe he needs to have another look at this, I think that'd be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to say, and it's all speculation, that's for sure. But I mean, there's certain things that just seem, bleeding obvious. Like with, again, we're looking from afar too, so we've got a little bit of comfort in, I suppose, we're not right on the edge, so we can look at it slightly differently. But when you've got the media saying, there's been a huge increase in gun license applications and no one saw that coming, you kind of go, really?
Yeah.
No one saw that coming. I mean, really? How did you not see that coming?
To your point, Mark,
that's right. How did you not think someone might kind of go? And the reason I think, and this is purely speculation on my part, and this might explain some of the things about we're seeing, is that I feel, and again, no proof of this, someone went, all we need to do is recycle 96 again. Okay? It worked once, it'll work again. And they went and say, last time it was a lay down misère, we got what we want, it went through, no problems. This time around, it's a whole different, shooting community, hunting community. They reacted differently and they went, hey, hang on, this is not, we didn't expect people to rush to get more licenses. We didn't expect that. So I think I think in many ways they've been caught off guard by the way that the hunting and shooting community has reacted to this. And my belief around that is because the hunting and shooting community of 96 is fundamentally different to the hunting and shooting community
so true. And so society, mate. And so society.
That's what I mean. We've, the way I describe it is once upon a time, we also ride bikes. Yeah. But now if you ride a bike, you've got a $30,000 carbon frame that's made by NASA and you got $3,000 worth of Lycra and you spend your half time in a wind tunnel trying to get, that's what riding a bike is now. And I think what's happened in the shooting and, huntings is that that's happened to us as well. We're now enthusiasts, spend a lot of money, spend a lot of time, spend a lot of energy, and you know what? We don't want that to go. That's a big part of who we are. So we don't want it to go. That's it. And I think that's what the kind of roadblock they're hitting now is that people are going, hey, I'm going to try and figure out a way around this. You might say it's very similar to like the potential changes to negative gearing and all that stuff. They change that. Some people will, but the majority of people won't go, I'm going to get out of investment. No, someone will come up a way that you can structure your investments and still do it. And I think that's what they're experiencing. People are going.
And I wouldn't, and that's not what you're saying, Mark, and all you girls. I don't think it's a loophole. Just to be clear, we're working within the confines of legislation.
No, that's what I mean. People are just going to go.
Right. I'll just adapt to the situation.
That's right. So they went like that, so I'm going to do that. Yeah.
That's right. So you're going to start saying, well, you got to be limited to guns. And it'll say, for what reason? As a consequence of what happened there, which really has nothing to do with the ones that you're trying to take them from. Okay. So what are we going to do now? Well, now we're going to end up with an influx of, so we ended up with probably double the people that would normally have licenses anyway. Okay. I don't see that as a bad thing.
No.
Notwithstanding that.
No, because they all vote.
No. Exactly right. And I think when I last had the opportunity to speak to a branch on the mid-north coast, and I was asked, Pete, what do you think in terms of what we should be doing? I don't know whether you gents are aware of it, and if you are, that's good. If you're not, you're about to know. So we've got an e-petition with State Parliament at New South Wales that is sitting at 98,300 people. Just to make this clear, this is the largest petition in Parliament ever on record. Now, you talk about... a rising of discontent. Wow. And to take nothing away from any other petition that has ever been presented before the footsteps of Parliament, we are poles in front of everyone else. Now, when I speak to people, I'm so glad I've had this opportunity, and they don't have to be a SSAA member. They just need to be part of our shooting family. Get on the state side. It's an e-petition. Sign up.
I'm pretty sure that we've been pushing people towards that.
Terrific.
I mean, it's again, it's only New South Wales. We can't sign it because it's New South Wales Parliament.
Totally agree. Yep.
There was two. There was one. There was that one, and I think there was another one, which
federal
was
one as well.
The federal one, which is like
Correct.
the safety. It's got something. What's it called? The Safe Australia one. We certainly pushed, made those aware to both people, and there was a target to get to 100,000. So you're closing in on it.
We're almost there. And then the second part, and you've raised it, Mark, in terms of votes and local members. I mean, we've all been in environments where at some time, maybe, I don't know whether you've experienced, but I'm sure your listeners would have, where you've just had a gutful. You've gone, I'm going to go and see my local member of Parliament. Okay, that's an avenue of inquiry. Off you go. You get an appointment. If you're lucky, they have the opportunity to see you, and a lot of them can and do. Others maybe not. And you say, I'm here to talk about this. Okay, what's it about? Well, the rising cost of living, electricity prices, there's all that, and that's not great. But if we were able to encourage people who feel as strongly as we do about what's going on, go and see a local member, because I promise you, as a local member, if you're getting enough people walking in the room complaining to you about the same thing, you need to listen. You've got to listen.
Totally agree. I think another interesting point, I'll circle back to that, another interesting point around the differences between the past and now is we have never been more connected, and I'm talking social media connected, that unites a community. I mean, news can happen and the world knows about it in seconds, right? That didn't happen back then. Uniting everybody, with news and updates, that didn't happen in the previous life. Now you've got Tom Kenyon jumping on. I'm watching his updates over my Weet-Bix every morning for a week, and you just know what's going on. And so there's that side, and I feel like that's what's united our group of people and enthusiasts to get behind stuff, because A, they hear about it, B, they're more informed than they were before, and we can give them some tangible actions to go and chase after. I think that's really important to what we've done. We put out a video in the early stages of this, which was how to write a letter. And it was a really simple, just put your thoughts on, type your thoughts out, or verbalize your thoughts into the ChatGPT engine and say, I want to send it to my local member and I live at this address. And it goes and finds your local member, writes the letter, addresses it appropriately, finds the email address and says, just hit the send button. And pretty much it can do all that for you. So before, when people were being asked to write letters, they'd sit down and go, I've got no penmanship. I don't know who my local member is. I don't even know how to find him. Just in the last 12 months, those tools have all popped up and become available, and have kind of given us a groundswell to sign and even create an e-petition that we couldn't do before. So I think that's all on our side now, and it's been quite fascinating to watch.
Very fascinating. Yeah, you look at all the streams that now and then, and how the polls are running, and I'm always interested to better understanding how polls are actually drawn. But notwithstanding that, likes and shares and all those things is the new age way of, I guess, polls, at least within the social media environment. And what's happening now in terms of a sway, in terms of how people are thinking, if you're reading it and watching it, which no doubt you gents are, it's interesting reading. So whilst I don't disagree with you, Hills, in terms of the ChatGPT and all that, I'm old school, mate. I still think boots on the ground, standing up, knocking on the door, saying, hey, I'm here, and it's all encompassing, every angle, and they're not cheeky or rogue, they're true. And if you've got the opportunity to go to your local member and say, hey, I've got a problem with this, and I'm one of many, those that you'll get letters from, those you'll get emails from, and those that will come to your doorstep.
Look, we've got it. We've got it in living action. So very similar to what you're saying, Robbie Cattle. We had this great conversation, and he was kind of saying do two things. If you're unhappy, tell them you're unhappy. You're saying, like, these laws are going to affect me and I'm unhappy about it. You don't have to you don't have to build the legal case. You just have to say, if this happens, I'm going to be unhappy about it.
That's right.
But conversely, if it goes your way, say, hey, look, I'm happy about that. So, and he was talking about both ends of the spectrum in terms of effect. So I actually, after that podcast, I shot an email off to Premier and it went into the system. And then after the Parliament, and on the Tuesday, I sent another one and said, look, I appreciate it. I thanks. And because I live in a Labor electorate, that the closest LNP is 10, 15 minutes away. So I actually contacted that guy and said, first thing, I don't live in the electorate, but, and he's come back to me and said, thanks very much. So, that kind of, there's power in that. So if you have if you think you can knock on the door or make a Friday meeting, go for it. But if you can't, still communicate. Say,
all
I'm unhappy.
representations,
That's
all
right. I'm unhappy.
representations, all representations on every level. Social media today is unprecedented. Back to Hals's point, back when the Tasmanian thing happened, none of that was alive then. And you'd be interested to work out sort of what people were sort of feeding off in terms of what was being presented as what really happened and what didn't. We're looking at the news, we're reading newspapers, and that was it, right? So,
and we all know if you subscribe to the news, if you listen to Sky, they're anti. If you listen to ABC, they're pro. Whoever the news was in your house would feed you your view, because you can watch exactly the same incident unfold on two different channels, and we've got an anti and we've got a pro. It's my goodness.
I've been there, mate.
It's crazy.
It's not war stories, but I've been at policing things, and you're actually there, and something happens. I don't watch the news much anymore. You get home and it'll be televised. You're going, that didn't happen. I was there. That's not what happened.
Yeah. You see it all the time.
Part of the narrative, mate.
I was trying to remember what it was. I can't remember what it was now, but it was a half truth in the. Oh, it was a localized story. Anyway, I won't go into it. The other thing I was going to say about the swelling of the people, the all of the spouses getting licenses and things like that, and you say we're not chasing loopholes. We're not chasing loopholes. My wife's a horse enthusiast. If biosecurity turned around tomorrow and said you're only allowed one competition horse on your land per person, I'd own a horse tomorrow.
Yeah.
So my wife could ride two of them. This is just the world we.
Well, let me unpack some of the challenges we have in New South Wales. So let's say from the outset, as a primary producer, the way it currently sits, and it's legislated, it's in the Act, not to be confused with the regs. As a primary producer, you have 10 guns. Now, my interpretation of that means you can't apply for any more. So that's my interpretation. I'm not legally minded.
You've copped out.
Yeah, I'm copped out. So that's my interpretation. However, as a sports target shooter, you can apply to a commissioner for more, which will probably come under what they call a 28G commissioner's permit, if indeed the regulator believes that you have the genuine reason or need to have more guns. So park the primary producer, which in itself I think is not cool. That's the Act. In order for the Act to be changed, that needs to be repealed, and that's a big deal. Okay. The regs can work in terms of how they're going to support the Act. All right. So as a sports target shooter, we've got juniors coming through, and to your point, Hills, when it comes to horses, like we've got juniors that aren't. Your dad's not going to hand in their gun and go, "There's my gun. Off you go, son. Off you go, daughter." And they're going to go, "What? This? How am I going to?" That's part of their 10. So if you've got 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids, and they want to enter the sport of sports shooting or target, whatever,
I hadn't considered this.
That's part of it, Hills. That's part of the logic. That's part of the math. And they're going up. So now I'm sort of saying, well, I've got to unpack that. The commissioner's permit, does that mean that for every gun that you asked over and above the 10, whilst they say you can have it, you've got to apply for an individual permit? Now, anyone that's had anything to do with the permit system current state, it's not easy. And I'm not here to throw stones at the registry, and you can draw what you want from that, but to say there are a lot of good people who work at the registry. I don't know how much involvement they've had in terms of what this looks like, and I'm not here to speculate, but to say it's a big job. And if we're going to start now looking at permits or any other application or authority or license, and that's going to take time. So I don't know how they're going to unpack that in terms of what process now is in place to allow for a junior, let's just say, and we'll just stick with a junior, to have firearms in New South Wales, whereas someone between 12 and 18, you're not allowed to have a license under your name, a firearm under your name. No. It's got to go on someone else's license.
That's right. So my boy's got his junior license here in Queensland, and he can do lots of things, but he can't own a firearm.
Nope. So if
Yeah.
mum has a sports target, genuine reason in New South Wales, mum gets 10 guns. And if she has 1, 2 or 3 kids, somehow in that 10, notwithstanding our own discipline, we've got disciplines where you can have up to 16 guns. We spoke earlier, Mark, about Wild Bunch. That's a 3-gun event.
Yeah.
So that's one person. And you don't just have 3 guns, as you probably know. You'd have a couple of each at least. Yeah. So all of a sudden, that's got to become part of your math when it comes to bringing your kids through. No differently to tennis, squash, golf, horse riding. How do we do this? How does this work?
Yeah, it's a good point. I do a bit of competition trap shooting, and I see quite a lot of farmers, families. They come in from wherever, do the weekend shoots. They bring the family, the kids will shoot. The teenagers will shoot. Dad will shoot. Often mum shoots, and they do multidiscipline. It's a family thing that they're doing. I can think of quite a few families that I see around the traps that come in and do it together that would impact a lot. Yeah, I hadn't considered the whole family dynamic. So 10 guns if I'm a primary producer, is it manageable? It's a pain. I can change a bunch of things and make it work. I'll have to. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah. And when it comes to sports target, you've got 10, you've got to apply for whatever comes
So
next.
if you're a primary producer, it says you've got 10 firearms.
Yeah.
But does that circumvent the fact that you're also potentially a sports shooter?
That's the unknown. So
because there's no way that the farm firearms
can be used for no. So
Hurls, they don't turn up with old side by side shotguns.
No way.
They're shooting competition.
No, I'm not taking the competition gun out, sticking steel beads down it.
That's right.
So
that's
right. That's
completely
exactly right.
I'm not. That's right. I'm not running buckshot down my DT11 on hogs. So
let's hope not.
Well, I would.
I mean, there's actually no reason you can't. The barrels will cop it, but it's you still don't take your very well tuned shotgun out there for bashing around the scrub. That's true. Yeah.
So I didn't even think about it that way. So so you could actually say, well, technically you could say this is my primary producer armory.
Shotgun. Yeah.
Armory.
Yeah.
No, you're not getting 10 more.
Here's my sports shooter armory.
Maybe.
No.
So under those genuine reasons.
Well, you could say I could do both with one. So what am I doing?
Well, now you're assuming that the rules are going to be sensible. Let's not go
no.
there.
No.
Again,
I'm thinking. I'm
this
thinking,
is a lack of clarity. This is what we're saying.
I think this is the kind of thing that people will say, "Hey, I need to have some kind of specific ruling on," as you said. Whatever it is, the commission is, or whatever it is. They make a judgment call. You could see that those would, certainly there'd be a big line of those things coming through. And as you said, if you've got 3 kids and one of them shoots competition air rifle, one of them shoots 22 silhouette and stuff like that, well, there's 4 or 5 guns because it's not just one each. So then
then if you wanted to shoot a discipline, like we've got,
that's right. Then there's you
handgun disciplines,
and you could
God help you if you want to take up paintball.
Wow.
Well, you did, Hills. You did go there.
Yeah, that's another way I haven't thought about it yet. That's even wow.
Well, yeah. So let's leave that. Let's leave that for half a second. So that's one thing. What other major changes are impacting you in New South Wales? So
we're still trying to
numbers of guns.
The numbers of guns, but that even flows into, I guess, my world and maybe a little bit of yours, or not as much. But the club environment. So as a shooting club, you have the ability to have club guns, and no differently to what we just spoke about. Club guns are there for the purposes of people coming through as an entry-level participant who can use the club guns under supervision. So 10 guns for a club. We've got clubs that could be large clubs, 1,000 members, 500 members, even 100 members. And we've got 10 guns at this stage at least, where we are being told that under the license, because it's sports target, that the club, even though it's an entity, in my mind, not an individual that you need to worry about in terms of their background, if they've been naughty and all that stuff. This is an entity, a sports target club license, that they're at this stage, my interpretation, restricted to 10 guns.
Far out.
And that's an entity. That's not an individual, is it? That's not a licensing.
No.
That's a thing.
That's a thing. That's and let's take it to any sporting environment, whether it be soccer. So we're going to turn up to the footy club and got one footy ball to.
That's right. Sorry, there's 10. That's right, guys. That's right. There's 10 soccer balls. That's it. Sorry. No more.
We do with that. And they stay in the club. They've got a club armourer. They've used for training. They're locked in the club. Everyone goes home.
And you can see that a rigmarole to borrow that gun and take it off the range, because I've tried to do that in the past with my own shotgun club. It's not simple.
No, in New South Wales, you can't do it because it's licensed to the club for training.
It doesn't belong to an individual; it belongs to the club itself. So
at this stage, my interpretation is that given it's a sports target license, so they're treating it as a license, despite who it's attached to, not an individual. We're talking about quotas. Come on.
Okay, that's an interesting one, isn't it?
That's another one.
And then sticking with the clubs, and again, something that Robert Balzac Jr. the other day brought up was, having to become a member of a target club to get access to those 10 licenses. So, there's a real risk that the average Joe's going to shift from his hunting club to the target club so that he can do this, and the hunting clubs will fade away to some respect because individuals aren't going to want to.
Junior, like Robert Jr. and I speak, and we're aligned in terms of the overall effort when it comes to law-abiding firearms owners. Notwithstanding that, I would like to think that if we're going to start to move into a mandated process where as a hunter you must join a club, that we would think more about how do we support the hunting discipline, not in isolation of a sports target discipline. So to me, what can we do that would better support hunters that is specific to what I would say would be a hunting discipline? And there's so much that we can think about in that environment. Now, in New South Wales, again, hunting clubs are hunting clubs. There's still a requirement that they do an X amount of mandatory shoots per year. And then the hunting club in that environment would take people similar to your activity out on hunts. So that's part of it. And then there's other ways in terms of New South Wales which are rec hunters, so you don't have to be a part of a hunting club in circumstances that you've got a property owner that lets you go and shoot on their property. I think what's come about is that they're trying to get those people who aren't aligned to a club and more aligned to a farmer to come within the environment. But I still think that if we're going to bring hunters into a hunting club, we should very seriously think about how that would value add to the hunter's experience. And the very people that I'd be asking would be simply the hunters. What could we run an activity, a shooting activity that helps you hone your skills on a range prior to going out on a hunt, for instance?
Rather than just a tick box exercise to satisfy a law, but actually add some value with it.
So this is, we run a 304 course with National Parks and Wildlife, which is a humanely destroy animals. Now, that's not to say that hunters don't do that, but as a prerequisite requirement for our members to go on to a national park with National Parks and Wildlife in New South Wales, they require this course to be run. So we support our hunters that like to undertake those activities in concert with National Parks and Wildlife Rangers, this course.
Yep.
It's savvy to the activity. It makes sense to me. If the legislation stipulates that you must come into a club environment, well, let's think about how that attributes itself to hunting activity.
And I think the clubs that sit down and have a hard look at that will survive it. They'll become bigger and better.
I actually think they'll thrive. I mean, there's two really interesting things that are happening here that, for us don't seem to be unintended consequences. They seem to be quite, reasonable consequences. One is if 5% of the people in New South Wales go, this is just too hard and throw it in, say 5%. So they just go, I can't figure out what I'm doing. I'm just going to throw it in, which there's very likely that about 15% of people are going to say, I'm a new member. So the number of licensed firearm owners is probably going to increase as a whole in New South Wales.
Yeah, that's a fair statement.
And they're all voters. So this voting block is actually going to get bigger, not smaller.
Yeah.
The second thing is, like what happened in 96, clubs are going to get bigger because their membership's going to go up. So you might have a small club that becomes a medium-sized club. You might have a big club that becomes a very big club, and there's an opportunity for those clubs to interconnect and network, but I actually think there's going to be an increase, not a decrease. And I don't think they've given that too much thought, and I think another reason is they're probably a bit concerned about that now. It's going, hey, we thought we were going to lose them, we're going to drop them by 5%. It looks like they're going to go up by 15%. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see, and this idea that for people who are recreational hunters under the R license who now need to become a club member, it would be a very smart club indeed to say, you know what, let's actually put something together, as you suggested, that appeals to you. Not you have to be a captured, basically a prisoner of legislation and say, I've got to join this thing because you reckon I do. No, if you join this thing, there's a whole lot of benefits. And again, that I think that there's a real opportunity for that.
Well, there's so much you can be drawn from it. Hill spoke about it earlier. Can you imagine having an environment where you can start going through the fundamentals? And I asked you earlier, Hills, about your one-on-one activity. You're saying, no, that's not exactly that. So you got an avenue of some type of training, and we all need it. You can run thermal activities in that environment. So much you can do, and you use that as the auspice of your training ground before you send the hunters go out and hunt.
And the other thing is too, it just gives you more authority. When people say, well, actually, no, if you want to know what a New South Wales hunter has to do, here's all the things that a New South Wales hunter has to do. They're actually highly trained, quite skilled recreational hunters. They do more training that you do than have to get a car driver's license and things like that. So I think 100%. That's also. And so when you look at places around the world where there is a lot of that, especially in the European countries, there's very little criticism that sticks when they throw it at hunters. They're going, this isn't 1970s look back and fright version of what hunting is. Guys run around the ute shooting kangaroos. These are basically semi-professional but recreational people who have very high level skill, have gone through a lot of training, know a lot about what they're doing. They're enthusiasts, not something that that you think they are. And I think that's there's a real opportunity for that to happen, to grow that side of the things as well.
Well, Mark, it's interesting you say that, because when Robert Balzac Sr. Was presenting his hunting bill in Parliament, the President, Lance Miller from SSAA, and I went and spoke to that, exactly what you say, in circumstances where I would say, and you guys would get this as much as anyone else was, we look at volunteer services across the country, and where would we be without them?
Right.
Rural Fire Brigade volunteers, RFS in New South Wales, CS, State Emergency Services, all volunteers, Maritime VRA, volunteer. Where would we be? They're like our army of people that put their hand up. They've got their own self-sacrifice, they're committed. So we say in these environments, hunters are absolutely key to this. We've got a niche group of people who are dedicated, trained, passionate, and they can come and assist us with all sorts of issues referring to the hunting environment. Also, I truly understand that hunters in your space, perhaps for the most part, the experience is key, the harvesting is key and all that. That's good. My earlier question referring to the biosecurity was part of perhaps an untapped service in the volunteer space that could rely on law-abiding hunters who can impact on what's now becoming a growing concern when it comes to our primary producers. I think 80 or 90% of the New South Wales produce at least comes from the areas that have impacted so much from these decisions. So, and a biosecurity program with the government that's doing its best but can't keep up. VPAC program, they can't keep up.
Well, the really interesting thing about this, and I use that word interesting, politely. If you said, I've got this group of people who are going to spend lots and lots of money doing something that's going to help the state, and they're going to do it for free. In fact, they're going to pay for it. You'd say, well, who are these champions?
That's right. And they're trained and they're responsible.
So imagine someone saying, and some of the criticisms of what we're talking about just doesn't fly in any other kind of environment. Imagine saying to people in Clean Up Australia, so look, don't do it because it's not structured, it's not strategic. You're not, so, just leave the rubbish where it is.
Leave it where it is.
You're not professionals. It's not strategic. We're not driving it from the, from a governmental or an NGO level. Nice try, but you're not doing anything. Imagine saying that, or it just wouldn't happen. Or you go to the men's shed and say, look, you're not professional psychologists, so just close the door and,
That's right.
you wouldn't
Don't worry about
dare,
it anymore.
you wouldn't dare say
Yeah.
that. So yeah, I think that volunteer part needs to be much more
It's a great
focused
angle.
on the
It's
fact.
It's key. And the difference between those avenues that you just mentioned, Mark, which are all great assets to us as a whole, is that the very people, not only are we saying are capable and are volunteers, they've gone through a process where you've elected them in terms of a regulatory process, fit and proper in New South Wales, unlike any other,
volunteer. That's right.
fit and proper. And you get through this whole regime of regulation. I'm not here to say right when we're indifferent. You come out the other end as going, yep, righto, you're in. And you've got a capability where you're willing, as you've just articulated, to go to an area and be part of the solution. And you're happy to do that. Why would you draw on that as government? Why would you do that?
Yeah. And look, on a side note, Robert Borsak Jr. was very complimentary of you, but he says you need to do more media.
Does he?
He said, tell him he needs to get on more media. So that's
after tonight, you might disagree with that.
Well, no, we said we'll help him with that. So that's it.
Right.
So,
it's been an absolute pleasure, gents. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, don't pull the pin yet. We've got some to go yet. So I suppose the big question is, what do you want to say to people in New South Wales in the, in not just your membership, but that, as you keep calling it, the family? What should they do?
Well, openly, not just SSAA members.
Yep, that's it, the family.
The New South Wales firearms community, mate, 100%. Law-abiding firearms owners. That's it.
You said people, family before. I think that was
100%. 100%. No, I'm absolutely true. No, family is absolutely the shooting family. The two things which I mentioned, firstly, sign that petition. It is the largest petition on record in New South Wales parliamentary history. Not only is it the largest, it was the fastest growing. 98,300, notwithstanding that is a New South Wales requirement, tick on a box, say you care. And to both your points earlier, just say you do care. I think you said, Kappa said the same thing. Like you said, Kappa said, like, just tell them you're not happy. That's one way. And I'd encourage you to do that openly. The second part would be go and knock on the door. I know, Earls, you've got a version. If you can't knock on the door, send in a letter. But represent, your interests and the interests of all of us. We can't be the silent minority on this in circumstances that we are the most affected by.
Let me add to the record. I wrote that letter. I used ChatGPT, and when I didn't get an answer, I knocked on his door and I had a conversation. Well, I didn't have to knock on the door because he attended a function that I was at, and I said, "Hey,
remember me,
Mr. Treasurer of Queensland? I wrote 2 letters and I haven't heard from you. What's going on?" Well, we better have a sidebar. So we had a conversation. I know him. It's funny. He was on holiday, but that aside, he responded not long after that, which was really good. I think it's hard to get their time sometimes. Like a lot of them, especially if they've got senior positions, they're pulled all over the place. But interesting, they do attend public events, and you can get a sidebar with them for a couple of seconds. Yeah, take the opportunity to do it for sure.
It's a worthy effort too, mate. It's an absolute worthy effort.
Yeah.
All fronts.
One last thing that you just made me think about. About that petition. The number of people that we've spoken to who've said, I can't sign it because I don't live in New South Wales. And just clearly demonstrates the kind of people we're talking about. We're not going, oh, look, we'll just all pretend we're from New South Wales.
You're so true.
Oh, look, I can't sign it, mate. I can't do it because I'm not from New South Wales. So we kind of literally see the thing that says, are you a member of are you live in New South Wales? We go, no. Sorry, no. So,
so we're not going to tell an untruth.
That's it. We're self-selecting on that even. So if that's not a sign of the family, I think that's I don't know what else is. Okay.
That's great.
Any other questions, Mark?
No, I think we've had a great conversation, and it's really been great to speak with you, Pete. I know it took a bit of juggling, but we've got you there. Great companion piece. I was going to say bookend, companion piece to Robert Borsak Jr. So we've got a really good understanding of what's happening in New South Wales.
Okay, gents, thanks for it. In terms of my understanding of how this was going to be, it's probably better than I thought, and I meant that in the best of ways. Thanks, Hills. Thanks, Mark. I really do.
Been a great conversation.
It's good.
Thank you. Appreciate it, mate. Yep. We'll catch you again.
Take care, gents. All right.
Cheers, Peter.
Take care. Hooroo.
Yeah.
Rightio, that's a wrap from the team at the Hunters Campfire. We hope you had a laugh, learned something useful, or at least were a little bit entertained. and you feel a little bit more pumped up for your next hunting, shooting, or outdoor misadventure. As always, a massive thanks for the support from our friends at SSAA and Beretta Australia. Whether you're out there chasing game, telling lies to your mates around the fire, or just trying to remember where you left your boots, stay wild, stay curious, and for the love of all things blaze, stay safe, so we can see you back around the fire next time.